Welcome to Future of Fandom, the podcast where leagues, teams, and federations learn how to turn passive viewers into loyal superfans through gamification, loyalty, and next-gen engagement. Let's build what's next together.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Fandom. A special episode, actually, our first live one. We're here in the Meta office in London, and I'm here with Rob Pilgrim from Meta. Thanks for joining us. Genuinely appreciate you letting us use your office. And I just want to mention that we didn't coordinate before. This is just great mind things alike, right?
Exactly, yeah. Outfits match. Yeah.
But I'm excited to be here today. Honestly, a lot to discuss, lot of ground to cover. But maybe we just, for the audience's sake, start with your background. You've been in the industry for quite a while now. Would love to know your background, what you've been up to, and what you're doing now at Meta.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Great to have you guys in here today. My journey in sport goes from my time at Google, where I started looking after the relationship with Adidas a long time ago through the 2014 World Cup, which was a fantastic experience.
Yeah.
I was then at YouTube for 8 years, starting in partnerships and then looking after the sports team on that side. And really a lot of what we did there was building out the home of highlights, starting to have a bit more live on the platform, and working with a mix of rights holders and creators to make great sports experiences through this, explosion of content.
Yeah.
And now at Meta, leading the sports team since September for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And really what that entails is we look after the relationships with the sports industry that's based here, all segments of it, from athletes and creators to rights holders, broadcasters, clubs. And the mission is twofold. So one is to make sure that the best of Meta is available to sports partners, so they know across the different apps that Meta has how they can make the most of it.
Yeah.
And that's across Instagram, Facebook, Threads, WhatsApp, the new glasses, which we brought out, which I know we want to get into talking about.
Absolutely.
And so there's all these different experiences we want to bring the best of to the market. And then vice versa, the other half of the job for my team is how do we understand what the sports industry needs, and we should be building to meet the needs of the industry. So we kind of play this pivotal role across the two. So yes, there's a little bit about my role here. Yeah.
That's awesome, actually, because you mentioned, working with the sports industry. I mean, one of the things that we find the most challenging is just, we've been working on this for the past decade now, moving fandom or moving organizations to get their fans to go from passive consumption, linear broadcast rights, lean back viewing, to more of a lean in, active, participatory type of an experience. You obviously have experience with this now, whether with YouTube or with Meta. What do you think is the biggest challenge in getting rights holders and partners to get moving in that direction?
Yeah. And I think you put it really well, that there is that journey of how do you start by watching something and sparking interest through to taking action.
Yeah.
I think the first thing I'd say is that the passive consumption bit is still really, really valuable. It's the top of the funnel. It's the way that you are exposed and become interested in a sport. And so from a Meta point of view, that can be finding a video of a sport you didn't know about or a player you weren't as interested in on Instagram, and then going through to take action. And I think if I just start on the consumption bit, lots has changed, mainly given the differences in changing viewing habits on the live sport, that we sit in front of the TV and we consume the live sport, but at the same time, we're on our phones, we're interacting with other aspects of the content, we're sharing things with friends, we're consuming stats or even trivia and games, which I know is a big part of what your organization has been helping sports federations with. So I think that has changed. The idea that you sit completely passively and just consume a game is no longer the case. And actually, if you observe people on their sofas watching a football game, they're often doing a bunch of other stuff at the same time. And
may not be related to the game.
True.
At times.
It could even be beyond. And my provocation is that actually the TV sometimes becomes the second screen.
Yeah.
So the first screen is how you're sharing and interacting with your friends and debating the moments that are happening. And then the live on the TV is a stimulus for that conversation that you're having with people. So that's one big change I think we've seen, and especially amongst younger audiences, the habits have changed dramatically. So we know for young people here in the UK, they're watching about 17 minutes of TV on average per day, when that used to be hours and hours.
Oh, wow. I did not know that stat.
Yeah,
wow.
So it's really different. And I think sports organizations are obviously rethinking then how to capture attention through the mobile. So that's on the consumption side. And then I think on the, you phrased it as almost taking action or participation.
Participation, yeah.
I think then we're very thoughtful at Meta about how we create that, the shop window kind of experience. So I think the way that sports federations can use the apps in a smart way is to think of it as the front door or the shop window where you put a good amount of content out. Often more raw content is what we're encouraging people to do that shows a bit more behind the scenes and sparking enough curiosity for someone to take an action and do more.
Yeah.
And I think where we are in the era of fan engagement is maybe moving beyond likes, clicks, comments into more meaningful emotional experiences.
Yeah.
So those metrics are great, and I think they're a great starting point. But I think in 2026, we've got to be bolder and think about how we're creating experiences beyond that. So on the social media apps, that can be things like shares. Shares are really important now to a platform like Instagram, where actually if you track your shares per reach, that's a really good metric of whether fans are taking your content and tokenizing it and sharing it onto people that they think will enjoy this experience. Is a
and
really
this
good
could be
signal.
sharing off platform or through a WhatsApp or on like a story or something.
Exactly that.
Okay.
So now we see on Instagram more reels are consumed through DMs than through the feed, which is really interesting because you would assume that you would go and you would scroll through and that experience would be enough. But actually it's when you take it and say, hey, Miheer, this is us. Like this is something we've talked about. It becomes more meaningful.
Yeah.
And then you're right, sharing into a WhatsApp group is for many organizations like the gold standard. Because once you get into there, it's really
that's where
powerful.
the pre-created communities or like self-selected communities exist in any case. So like I find myself sharing a lot of Formula One content in my F1 WhatsApp group.
Yes.
Like that's how I get, instead of sharing it on Instagram DMs or something, I want to share it with all my friends at the same time. And that group already exists.
Yes. And I think that's is meaningful. So the challenge for an organization is how are you making that content? If you're Formula One, how are you making content that we feel comfortable to share into our WhatsApp groups and so on? So there's the sharing aspect of that. And one thing I've spoken about before with rights holders is the difference between if you watch somebody on their phone consuming content, there's a difference between one finger scrolling and two thumbs engagement, which I really like. So if you're watching someone, how are you making videos or content that they want to interact with is your gold standard. And then I think we're very conscious at Meta that there's only so much that we can do on our own apps before you need an experience which is richer and more different. And this is where we encourage rights holders to drive to their own apps and their own experiences where there's extra that you can do on top of what we can do on the Meta social apps. So you mentioned WhatsApp. It's actually great for sending traffic out from the app into websites and owned apps for things like ticketing or retail or fantasy. You know, all these things that we can't do completely closed loop on the social apps are becoming really important. So there's a few ideas. I think there's a huge value still in consumption. Then there's the kind of action you take on the apps. And then thirdly, I think about how we're being a good shop window for the places that sports organizations want to send fans to.
That's actually a good point because that was going to be my next question. I mean, honestly, I do think that the organizations are doing a good job with broad reach. How do they get them onto their owned and operated platforms? Because that's where you truly get to know your fan, right? Like ultimately, if you're an organization for whom reach matters, I mean, a new organization, new league, where just getting it out to as many people as possible because you still don't know what your core audience is, get it out there, broadcast it out there, makes sense. And I've heard other Meta executives in the past talk about how Meta is the new broadcast, right? Like it reaches as many people as possible. But you don't know who your fan is truly if they're just following you on Instagram or Facebook. To get to know your fan better, get to know their likes and dislikes, track their journeys, understand what their preferences are so that you can then personalize their journey directly with them. You do have to get them into your O&O platforms in some way. And that could be data capture, that could be playing games, that could be building communities, it could be ticketing, commerce, whatever. Do you work with organizations on that part of it as well? Or are you, or your job is to say like you should do it, but you're focused more on how to activate them on the social media platform, on your social platforms?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think I see my team's roles as consultative. So we should be really trying to deeply understand what it is the partner wants to achieve. And it's not always the same, right? So there are some that really want to build up an O&O presence. There's others that are quite happy being distributed, elsewhere.
Yeah.
Some may be more interested in audience. Some may be more interested in growing their business and commerciality.
Yeah,
Some come
absolutely.
to us because they want to innovate. Like they have those two bits in a good place.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone wants more audience and more business, but some come to us for creativity and innovation. That's where things like our new ground in the glasses really comes into that. But yeah, we try and take a consultative approach of what is it you're trying to achieve as a business, and then we have a bunch of business solutions that we can help retrofit to those goals. Now, the amount that we can influence is strongly linked to what's available on the apps. So we can then tailor our products to, hey, you really should be using the ticket selling feature within Instagram if you want to shift tickets, or hey, you're really interested in growing amongst younger audiences. Here's the kind of content that they like or they appreciate. The moment that we send people off platform into partners' apps is really then on them to figure out what that experience is. I think my advice is always when you're encouraging a fan to join the app, what is it there that's the value add, and what's going to make them really care about having that app in their pocket amongst another 100 apps?
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know how many
right.
we've got.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing a transition from the basic app features, which have been there for a while, to a demand and a hunger and an appetite for more compelling experiences. And so not only are you competing with all the other sports that are in your marketplace, other clubs, if you're a football team, for example, but also the other aggregated apps like OneFootball or Fanzo, or
Absolutely.
There's a bunch of different experiences.
Yeah, in the
now.
US, it's Bleacher Report. as an
Bleacher,
example.
So, or even stats apps that people want to go deeper. So you've got to think about your competition as how are you attracting attention for your app in amongst a very crowded space, and what's your unique value proposition? And if that value proposition of me downloading an app is that I can see the scores or I can see a bit of video, I'm not sure that's enough anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a great starting place, but I think about how you're having something that I can only open the app to experience. That's what's going to get me to click it. And I think that's where we're seeing a transition with organizations on a spectrum of starting with those basic features and laddering to something that's really unique. I mean, I was on the Formula One app trying to pick my fantasy team.
Yeah.
Like, that's a great value proposition.
Absolutely.
So I can't do that elsewhere. So yeah, I think that's where you're seeing more sophistication being required from rights holders to develop something that's additive, rather than you can kind of find it on other websites and so on.
That's actually one of the key tenets when we talk to our partners. It's can't just be a Me Too app. You need to, first of all, your audience is used to certain quality of experiences now, right? So it behooves you to actually move beyond scores. And also because today, I mean, the whole world is changing. I don't even know if people go to ESPN for scores anymore. It's just going to Google and just typing in, and it just tells you what the score is, or your agent is telling you what's happening or whatever on ChatGPT or Meta. But in order for you to deepen the loyalty with your fan base, with your brand, you need to provide them something that is uniquely coming only from you, whether it's a emotional connection with the football team or the league, or it's some prizes, giveaways, rewards that only you can offer, that no one else can offer. Like a OneFootball may not be able to offer tickets to a Chelsea football game. Only Chelsea can. So you want your fans to come into the Chelsea app and participate because there's something special there. Or you find your community within the Chelsea fan base, inside the Chelsea app. That becomes your town hall. That becomes a key factor. And I do think, I mean, from my perspective, I'm starting to see more and more organizations come to that realization. But as you said, you take a consultative approach, and, to a certain extent, you're almost like their guides in a way, not just on social, but also on their end-to-end fan journey. So that's interesting that you're saying the same thing, because our approach has always been, don't just rely on social platforms. You need to build your own. But the fact that you're saying that is also interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's complementary, right? Like there's a huge, we're talking about marketing here at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
Which is, how are you getting a fan to care about your product, which is your club or your league? And then once you've built that care, and I think this is where people rush too much sometimes, once you've built that care in a meaningful, sustainable way, how do you then encourage them to invest more? And invest could be their time, it could be their money, it could be transactions. But I think you don't want to skip down that funnel too quickly. And starting with the top of the funnel, getting people aware and interested, then moving them to feel some passion, and you mentioned community, and then get to a stage where you're using the sign-in of the data or whatever to transact. That may take time. And I think we're all under pressure to deliver results. But I think trying to hold back on that a bit to create something that works for 10, 20 years, by being meaningful is the real challenge, rather than saying, okay, we have 100 million fans. How can we get all of them to spend twice as much money with us? It's a shortcut, and I think it's a bit short-term thinking.
Are you seeing your partners agree with that sentiment, or actually, whether it's agree or disagree, does it resonate with them that it's going to take time, and are they in it for the long haul?
I think it's almost arming them with the messaging that they can use with their own internal stakeholders, right? Because you have different organizations within organizations. If you ask the chief commercial officer, it's how am I converting my fan base into more meaningful revenue this week or this quarter?
Yeah.
And I think it's the job of a chief content officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief innovation officer to say, okay, but at the same time, we want to build something that's sustainable and gives us, true fan engagement and loyalty over 5 years, 10 years. How do we slow this pace a little bit?
Yeah.
Or how can we take some revenue on this side, but maybe be less transactional over here so that we grow things slowly? I don't think they're in opposition. I think you just have to balance them really nicely.
It's education more than anything else.
So I think we're just trying to arm them with those stories of think about how young fans get into a sport and feel passionate about it, or yourself. And then replicate that in your own experiences, and don't let it feel like you're just creating a place where you want to capture numbers or capture data. If it starts to feel like that, then fans will be put off.
It needs to be authentic.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because honestly, at this point in time, one of our biggest learnings from the dozens of partners we might have worked over the past couple of years is the technology exists today. What's lacking, or it's not lacking, what's make or break is more the strategy. Like, how are you messaging this? How are you communicating this to our Liffey fans? How are you guiding them through the journey? Because there are tons of tech platforms out there today that can allow you to build those experiences in your O&O. But as you said, don't rush it. Think about the funnel, think about the strategy, and we'll talk about AI, I'm sure, but it does lend itself to personalization more, understanding cohorts, guiding different cohorts through different journeys based on their preferences and likes and dislikes. Just an easy example, you don't need to offer a ticket to someone who's coming from 1,000 miles away in your app.
For sure.
They're never that's not resonating with them. But, in the past, that was not possible because people didn't have the resources to actually go through all the data, sift through all that, create those insights and analytics. But that's become easier today.
For sure.
So the part that is going to be really important is the strategy.
Yeah. And using that data in a really smart way. We've got great, it's funny. We sort of talked about how we drive people from an Instagram or a Facebook or a WhatsApp into an app.
Yeah.
But actually it can work the other way as well, that you're saying, now we have data on people and now we can remarket. Can we actually bring them back into a social platform to transact? So if you spent time in the app and you're a really passionate fan, next time you're on social, you can also transact there. And so I think that's the really smart use of data, more than just, an email when it's your birthday, or, something that's very simple and glib, but how are you creating things that are really close the loop, so you can actually know more about that fan, serve them a better experience, and then offer them products that really matter to them, rather than just a blanket of stuff.
But actually, that just brings me to the next point. You obviously operate a multitude of platforms as well, right? Everything from Instagram to Threads now to WhatsApp, obviously, for years, and now the glasses. How do you guide your partners in how what to use when? I'm keen to get into the glasses as well. You can get into it now, or we can wait for later. But I'm genuinely curious how you're positioning the glasses along with the rest of your platforms with your organizations, your partners.
Yeah, and you hit on something here, which is it's not easy, right? When you look at Meta and you list out all the products, it can feel a bit overwhelming or a bit confusing. And so a lot of our team's job is to make sure that people understand the value prop for each of them. So let me take you on a little tour. Let's go through each of them and how I see it. So Facebook, start with the core, of what built the company. It really differs depending on your market of how people use Facebook. So we've seen a transition of certain younger audiences in developed markets to Instagram for their primary social needs. But if you look at developing markets, let's take Africa, for example.
Yeah.
Facebook can still be the portal to the internet for these markets and still really, really matters. So we're still seeing it as that town square where people can have that fan group experience that was very original and kind of OG to Facebook.
That's right. Yeah.
It's also a place where you use your real name, your humanity. It's something that's very true to you, and has a lot of legacy value that I think people love. So we talk about it for sports organizations of here's how you can grow your audience, here's how you can host long form content. And we are seeing a bit of a resurgence in markets like the US and Canada of younger people flocking back to Facebook.
Oh, interesting.
Which is really encouraging. So we're trying to build features that feel a bit more native to that and create that.
That's actually
experience.
interesting. That's news. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's important. The other thing on Facebook, I think, as well, is it's still a place where you can create direct monetization, more so than the other apps that Meta offers, frankly. So we launched a new unified monetization last year. And so you're now rewarded less so from if an ad appears against your content as a pre-roll, and more of all the engagement you're generating on the platform, we reward that with monetization directly. And so there's a lot of organizations making very decent cash from being able to host their content on Facebook. So it's still a place where you can make that direct revenue.
And you're deciding the formula on what how the monetization works compared, like what are the inputs into that formula?
Yeah. So it's I'll give you an example. I think previously it was tied to, for example, a pre-roll ad against a video. You would get a revenue share of that, and much more actually how YouTube operated. So it'd be directly tied to the product.
Yeah.
But then what you're missing out on is, number one, when you launch new products, how do you reward creators for using those? And I think, again, at YouTube, we saw a struggle on that because the long form monetization was really good.
Yeah.
But when Shorts was launched, a lot of publishers said to us, but hang on a minute, this bit doesn't monetize as well. And so
it's cannibalizing.
Right. So therefore, I'm not incentivized to use it. Whereas what Facebook says is, look, we will decide how valuable the products are. And so even if you're posting photos that are getting engagement and bring an audience to Facebook, we'll reward you accordingly.
Interesting.
So it's a sort of a smarter way, I would say, a little bit less obvious and transparent of like, this video gives you this revenue.
Yeah.
But you can still understand how you got your check at the end of the month. So that's really encouraging. And in my first few months talking to partners, they are impressed by what they're able to do there. And look, it's never going to be, or at the moment anyway, it's not going to be the revenue that dramatically changes your own revenue lines, but it can stop you being a cost center as a content team, or it gives you more cash to invest in your content again. So there's a bit about Facebook.
Yeah.
Instagram is the obvious next place to go, which is the backbone of Meta at the moment. You just have to look at the earnings calls to understand how big that's become as a part of the company. The audience numbers are impressive. You know, you've got 3 billion people coming back every single month to use the app, which is
crazy.
really broad reach.
Yeah.
And you know, people really tap into that to grow their audience. I think things to know about Instagram. So it's a video platform now. So over half the viewing is on videos, which if you think about the humble beginnings of Instagram, like it was a photo app.
Photo sharing, yeah.
And even now when we work with Formula One, for example, or their drivers, they're very interested in the photo experience, and it is still an app where you can have that really nice photo experience, and it does well.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to me that the majority of time now is Reels.
Interesting. So it's Reels, not just through the feed, video on the feed.
Exactly.
Got it.
So that's been really popular. I think one of the things we're encouraging people to think about with Instagram is how to be a bit more, I talked about earlier, a bit more raw. And I think there's still a misperception that to succeed on Instagram, you need to be very polished.
Shiny,
You need the grid to be just the way you like it.
Yeah.
And look, we get it. It's a premium product. But actually, the creators we see having success are being a little bit more open, a bit more relaxed, a bit more behind the scenes. You'll now see the footballers through the work that we do with them doing their monthly carousel, you know, of like, here's what happened in January. And those photos can be really, or videos can be quite raw and quite basic of just what they've been doing around with their teammates.
Yeah.
This stuff I think is doing really well. So we're really trying to encourage athletes especially to think about how they show their hot takes, how they relax a bit more into the platform and put more content out, even if it's raw. So that's a big change. It's a place where we want people to show their creativity.
Yeah.
And then, you know, whole host of features launching through Instagram. So edits, for example, less relevant maybe for the sports industry that has developed production tools. But for creators, this is a great opportunity where they can edit stuff on the fly, link it to songs that are trending, etc. And then all of that's powered by AI in the sense that the recommendations should get smarter and smarter.
You're choosing rather than thinking about what to do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we want to find a healthy balance between exposing you to content that we know already that you love because you've watched 100 football videos in a row, but we also want to find that spontaneity that every so often we say, hey, what about this rugby video? And that brings you into a new sport. So that balance is tough. And that's not an Instagram problem, that's an internet problem, right? Of algorithm versus surprise and delight.
Yeah.
So there's a bit about Instagram, and then linked to that is Threads, right? Which is still the fastest growing social app that we've seen. Threads now has, I think if I got my numbers right, 400 million monthly active users, 150 million daily active users.
Wow.
By some measures, bigger than X now, which is impressive from a platform that grew so quickly.
Yeah.
But I think its full power is still not fully understood by the industry. So Formula One is a really good case study on Threads. It's the number one community. We rank communities on Threads.
Interesting.
It's number one, not just in sport, but all communities. So if you go on there, we now have all of the teams, all of the drivers interacting with each other in a healthy, in a healthy kind of banter way. So this weekend is going to be really exciting.
I mean, I'm a hardcore Formula One subreddit guy.
Nice.
I mean, that's the only reason why I use Reddit is the Formula One
F1
community group, because there's just so much to talk about, and it's perfect. It's not every day. It's 22 weekends, 24 weekends a year. So like it's not all consuming in a way. But when it's on, you're really, those 3 days, I can't think of anything else. So maybe I need to check out Threads now.
Definitely. There's a really good, and I think
the Formula One Threads, I mean.
For sure. There's a really good healthy interaction, which I think if you watch, you will, Drive to Survive.
Of course.
You see there's a good level of healthy competition and banter between the drivers, and that all plays out on Threads.
Okay.
So it's good. We're trying to do more in the football space. So we don't yet have a product-wise a football community, but this year we're looking to build that out around the World Cup. And the hard bit, I think, about building a community on Threads, which is a conversation platform, it's mainly text. We don't want people to put loads of video, which is different to the other apps, is you can't just have one partner talking in a vacuum. You need the whole community. But to get the whole community, you need to convince everyone there's chatter happening. Yeah. So that's the big push this year, is how do we get the athletes and the clubs and the leagues and FIFA to be creating a really nice community. And maybe with F1, that was easier because you've got, the 20 or so drivers, you've got the 10 or so teams. And so your partners required to create a community is a bit smaller. Football's much bigger.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
And then are you providing training, or are you actually providing experts? And like sort of almost like a forward deployed engineer, but like a forward deployed Threads strategist or something.
Yeah, it's more the former. I like the idea of the kind of deployed secondment, but it's more a lot of education, right, on like what matters. A lot of consultancy again on here's the stuff that works. So for example, people assume that by putting a load of video that will work, but it's really the text and the replies that help you grow quicker on there, and differentiates it, I think, from other platforms that are similar. So yeah, it's more of a education consultancy. When a new product comes out, we make sure the partners hear about it first.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. There's a spoiler feature. So you can do a post and you can have some of the wording kind of grayed out. And then only when you click it, it reveals the spoiler. So it's a nice experience for talking about TV or talking about sport where people might not have seen the result. Yeah. You can still have the post coming up in your feed, but only when you are ready you can see them.
Oh, interesting.
So stuff like that is working nicely for sport. Yeah, linking out to podcasts. We've got great features on there. So yeah, quite a lot of our time actually is spent educating on Threads, where we feel my team can do more in the market to show people how powerful it can be.
Yeah.
WhatsApp, I think, is one of the reasons I joined Meta, was the power of this app.
Yeah.
You talked about it for your Formula One group, and almost everyone I speak to has a group about something they're passionate about.
Classroom, parents.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's a whole different beast. But it's a really special app. Again, in terms of reach, I think 3 billion on the monthly users, and then 1 billion on the updates tab, which a lot of people don't know about or spend time in, but you kind of have your conversations with family and friends. And on the very left-hand side, you have updates. And that's the place where sports organizations live. So you open that, and then you'll have your, we were talking earlier about the England FA. They have their channel. Yeah. And in that space, they share content. And then in one click, you can share it to your group. So this is something we've worked a lot on with rights holders, is how are you making a really useful channel? Yeah. So the football teams, for example, will share their lineups just before the match goes live, and then you can share it into your private group.
Yeah.
So WhatsApp's really powerful, and I think lots more to come in there because it's quite a simple app at the moment, right? You go there for your conversation, you add your photos and videos, and that's it.
Yeah.
There's Meta AI, so you can ask it questions, but I think you'll see a lot more development there over the coming years. But the main two things we spend time with sports partners on is, one is that updates tab, like how are they making useful content in there?
Yeah.
And then two is, of all of the apps that we have, that's the traffic driver. So interesting for our conversation on apps, that's the one where you can most easily convince people to click,
Link
leave.
out and come back.
Yeah. More so than the other platforms, which sometimes it can be tricky to create that experience.
It's just the most organic. I mean, you don't go to WhatsApp. It's not like watching TV. You know, when you're watching TV, you're just like scrolling mindlessly and something shows up.
Yeah.
I think of Instagram as that, right? Like I'm just scrolling. It's a habit more. But WhatsApp is intentional. Like I am going to have a chat. I'm not just scrolling through my conversations to see what's going on. So when there's a lot more intent, you can be a lot more thoughtful about how to use that intent.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I wouldn't say slept on, which is kind of a bit of a cliche, but I think there's way more can be done around WhatsApp, and the smart rights holders are really leaning in on that and trying to figure it out, knowing that that's probably where your most passionate fans communicate their most.
Already.
And almost a portal, right? You can use it then to share threads and share Instagram posts and share YouTube videos.
Yeah.
So it becomes your entry to the sport conversation.
Yeah.
So I encourage rights holders to think about how they're inserting themselves in the group in an organic way.
Interesting.
So that's a huge business. And then what's emerging?
Yeah,
the
coming to the glasses.
Yeah. And not to tease it too much because people have seen it and it's developing. But I think it really changes what Meta's about.
Yeah.
And I joined at a time when the company was just launching the Oakley glasses, which are more of our sports glasses, obviously. So you can wear them when you're skiing or running or cycling. And the Vanguard wraparound ones are the ones that are more sort of sports proof, waterproof, weatherproof.
Yeah.
They've got more stabilization, so you can record stuff on the go. They've got what we call athletic intelligence, so you can link it to your fitness tracker, and then it will come up in the. It's not actually through the ear; it's over the ear with the bone conduction, the updates of heart rate, or it takes a video automatically when you reach a certain pace. So look, I think this is an exciting space. It's still very nascent, and so. Almost, I would say, the stage we're at with rights holders is saying, hey, we've got this new technology, which we think is exciting, but kind of over to you to show what you can do with it. So we're at the stage now where we've worked with a lot of our partners to make sure they've got a pair and they're using them, especially athletes. And now we're observing some of the content that's coming back that we didn't necessarily expect. And I liken it a bit to when mobile phones came out and then there was an explosion in social content. I think we're at another frontier where we're going to see what kind of content comes back from, athletes wearing these glasses and capturing new points of view on the content. So that's.
Are they using it specific moments, or are they always on?
So I think so far it's been more. Training is just a big part of it. I think athletes really enjoy using them while they're training or practicing. And then also for things like recovery.
Yeah.
So that's where we're seeing them show up. We don't have as many of them yet in the game.
Yeah.
And that'll be interesting to see if we can get to that point. Certain sports lend themselves better than others to the glasses.
Yeah.
I don't imagine we'll have 11 Arsenal players wearing them while they're playing. I mean, that's not going to work.
I also expect that to be something that might be regulated. I mean, we saw, I think in the Australian Open, Sinner and Alcaraz had to remove their Whoop smart bands.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't really understand why that would be the case, but I would expect, especially when you can capture and record moments, I would imagine leagues and federations might want to get involved in that.
Yeah.
Are you already starting to see that conversation happen?
For sure. Yeah. So I think generally like headphones, for example, aren't allowed in things like triathlon. And so there gets a level of competition where you can't use them as much at the moment. But part of the gig for us is to work with these organizations and be like, but what would we need to do to make it possible for them to be a part of that? But you're right, it's so new that we need to go step by step. And so for now, it's not so much about in the game. It's more about the training, the preparation, the dressing room. Those kind of moments is where athletes are having a lot of fun with them. And then sort of budding athletes are enjoying them. So, for people that just like to go running or do run clubs, like that's where they're really useful. weekend warrior types. That's where the market is.
Yeah.
And that's on the Oakley side. And then you've got the Ray-Ban side, which is more of a fashion product or something we can be using every day, which is more for, everyday content capture. My colleagues that work in food verticals, for example, are seeing a lot of chefs make food content because they finally got their hands free. So you can be chopping, you can be cooking, whereas before you had to have an awkward camera setup and so on. So I think it's exciting because we're about to see this explosion of content and we'll see what people can do with them.
Yeah.
But in sports, really, for now, the mission is how do we get them onto athletes for training to show what's possible?
Yeah, because I can see it being used for performance, right? Like, this is how you can do better. Try this approach. In competition, I think it might give you an unfair advantage. Tennis doesn't even allow analog coaching. So if you had glasses telling you this is the weakness or this guy's hobbling on this side of the court, push more there, I don't think that might be allowed just yet.
Yeah. Training's a great example and performance enhancement for those moments. So golf will be a good one. So can you capture your golf swing, and it actually, rather than needing a coach external to you, it can see the way you're taking your swing and say, hey, your elbow's a little bit high, or could you do this? So you can see very real applications.
Yeah.
Look, at this stage, it's fairly basic. They're used for content capture and things like heart rate and music. They're the main selling points. But you're going to see with each turn, exactly, more of that. And then there's the fan side as well. So, one of the things I think people still think is holds us back at sports events is you go to a football you go to a football game and then you spend a third of your time behind this glass rectangle while your favorite thing in the world is happening behind it. And so the glasses hopefully can take the friction out of that experience. Again, for the base case, just capturing a photo of a goal or a corner or a moment that you want to remember without getting in the way. And then in the advanced case, and this is more speculative, but could you see a world where through the Meta Ray-Ban display, which is where you have the display in the corner, that you could add on stats? Could you be watching a game and then feeding through more of the interactivity we talked about on apps through the glasses as well? So I think the real magic will be when you can enhance the fan experience in the stadium so that stuff's getting out of the way, you can enjoy the game, and then you're enhancing it with more stuff, or even, directing you around the stadium.
Yeah.
Like we've all had that experience when you get there, where's my seat, which gate? If your glasses could say, right, this way. So you can get back to what you enjoy. I think that's the magic. So
it's funny because I don't know if you know, but our Live Likes background was in VR. So we were one of the first companies to live stream content in virtual reality, work with every major broadcaster, rights holder. And this is when Facebook had just acquired Oculus, so quite early on, over a decade ago. But we were trying to bring that interactive, gamified experience, but obviously at home. So you had your glasses, you feel like you're watching the game in the stadium, and you had the Iron Man Jarvis experience, pull up stats, show me the formation, talk to friends, virtual experiences in a suite. You can move to different seats in the stadium and feel like that. It's almost like this is like mapping that virtual world onto the real world, whereas there it was, the real world was mapped into the virtual world in a way. But the idea was the same, right? Like, how do you augment your viewing experience with stats, with friends, with information that enhances the journey a little bit? So I do see the form factor here is far better in that sense. I'm a little scarred from my time in immersive experiences, just because how long, it took so long, and the promise was there, but the form factor didn't change. But this seems different.
Hopefully. And I think if you listen to Mark's earnings calls and what he talks about, I mean, this is somebody and a company that was a huge believer in VR, and the name of our company reflects that. And I think there is some regret that it's grown so well and it's still really relevant, and there's still all the stats of the number of teenagers in the US that have a VR headset. I want to say it's 1 in 3. It's high numbers, right, that are using this technology. However, the idea that it would become commonplace and fully integrated and that we'd be doing this podcast, it's not materialized in the same way. And so I think what is smart is that you can take the learnings from that and put it into the wearables, the glasses. And an acknowledgement from the company that that's more the future that people want rather than just the VR. But it's still big. It's still an important part of what we do. And so we're still connecting rights holders with with our Reality Labs team, where there's opportunities to make good VR experiences. We had a bunch with NBA this year.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's down to zero, but I think there's a recognition of if we have only so much energy, that we divert a bit of that towards the glasses. So yeah.
I as a personal anecdote, when COVID hit and we were at a crossroads as a company on where we want to go and what we want to focus on, we were making the decision to sell our VR business. And I remember calling someone from Oculus, I won't name him, but I was like, I'm going to do this. I don't want to regret it 6 months from now if you guys lean in. Because we almost all were looking for Facebook at the time, Meta now, to lean in. Like, hey, as the OEM, as the supplier, you have the most to benefit. Not only you have the most to benefit. So if you lean in, you seed this ecosystem, whether it's the developers, whether it's the content creators, whether it's the production guys. That's the only way this is going to happen, because the economics don't work otherwise. Especially when the install base wasn't as high. And only Meta could benefit from the install base being high, or benefit the most again. And I was like, if you guys lean in 6 months after I sell this business, it's gonna suck. And he's like, no, it's not gonna happen as fast as you think it's gonna be, so do it.
Yeah.
So
great.
like, okay,
sounds like you made a good decision.
I appreciate, this is 2020, so 6 years ago.
The funny thing is the parallel there obviously is with, and I remember being at Google when the first Google Glass came out, which was ahead of its time. And you talk about a form factor being right for the moment. I can't remember what year.
Google Glasses, I remember that.
You remember? Yeah,
of course.
Did you try a pair?
Not just the Google Glasses that came out. I never tried a pair. They look eerie.
Right, that was the problem.
I just never felt good with it. But also like the Google VR cardboard thing. Like, my God, it's only been 10 years, but some of the things that were happening back then felt so natural at the time. Yeah.
And I think that, and maybe that's where we are with VR, is like there's a moment that the Google Glass was, I think you're right. I think the look of them didn't help.
Yeah.
And Meta have been very smart in partnering with
Ray-Ban,
as well Luxottica to make sure that it's fashionable. But maybe it's similar in that there was a moment where it didn't quite fit and people weren't ready for it.
Yeah.
And now we're at a stage where the glass selling, it was 7 million units last year, growing 3 times year on year.
Yeah.
And so now's the moment. Maybe with VR it'll be similar. There'll be a moment where it resurges, but for now I think, to echo your point, it's not quite where the market is at scale.
Yeah. And that's the point.
Scale is the key
Scale,
thing. Yeah.
The only way the economics work is if there's a big install base, which then justifies the cost of production for this at every venue, all day long.
Yeah. And one of the pitches on the glasses is that I think there's 2 billion people around the world that wear some kind of glasses every day.
Yeah.
And so in 5-7 years, why would you not want those to be smart in some way?
Yeah.
And therefore you suddenly got a market. So scalability is key. Just to loop back on the Google Cardboard, one of my first things we did when I was at YouTube was we had the Champions League final with BT Sport on YouTube.
We did it.
As part of your work,
We did. The feed came from us.
There we go. Yeah. And that was great, because we were handing out these cardboards at train stations.
Yeah.
People were putting their phones in.
I remember.
And then
it was a partnership with EE.
Yeah.
So BT had the rights, but they did it with EE as a. And we produced that match.
Yeah, but it was ahead of its time.
This is Wales, I think, if I'm not wrong.
Cardiff, exactly.
Yeah, Cardiff, yeah.
And
I was there.
And that was great. And you just think about how far we've come. It wasn't even that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Like 10 years.
Jamie Hindhaugh.
It's special.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay, that's full circle moment. I usually try to block that part, because just like onwards and upwards, move forward kind of a thing. But there are times when you just come back, and I'm like looking at the BT Tower while we are talking right now, and I was thinking to myself, like the first Premier League game that we shot in VR, and what a big moment that was, that we actually live streamed this in. I guess it wasn't 4K at the time. Oh, it was 4K at the time. Yeah, in 4K and with the fisheye lens and completely new workflow than what partners were used to. But yeah.
And maybe some of the message or what we're trying to get to here is the ability to be brave and to innovate and to be willing to fail, I think is so embedded in Meta's culture.
Yeah.
And I think it's something it is hard, right? Because not every company doesn't have unlimited resources and can't always afford to fail. But I think what we are saying is when you're trying to create new fan experiences, how are you being brave and trying something different? not everyone will hit, right? Like the Google Cardboard was great for its moment, and maybe after that there weren't as many.
Yeah.
But I think the brands that win will be the ones that on their apps and on social are willing to take a bit more risk.
Yeah.
And so some of my message is how do we help you feel more comfortable about taking that risk? How do we make you feel more comfortable about sharing more on an Instagram or creating a WhatsApp channel or having a feed, one of your feeds be from the glasses in your production, and giving the right data, giving the right case studies so that people feel okay with it. But also you hear from a lot of sports partners, they want to be the first.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where we also have a lot of success is saying, hey, here's the opportunity. Let us know what you can do with the glasses or whatever. So yeah.
I mean, it actually leads me to my next question, which is actually what differentiates brands in terms of how well they activate, like what makes them stick out. But just to add on to it, like we find this all the time. Brands want to be first, they want exclusivity, but they're not willing to. I don't know if it's just a payment, like they're not willing to pay for exclusivity, but it's also one of those why. Like, why do you want? The more people use this, the more this becomes an habitual thing. The better. It's all tides rise kind of a thing.
Yeah.
There is no reason why you can be the first, but you don't need to be the only one.
Yes.
And if you are the only one, actually, it's gonna hurt you rather than help you.
Yeah.
So that collaborative approach. I mean, now we're starting to see leagues and push it across all the teams, so it's not just a one-by-one thing.
Yeah.
You mentioned the work that you do with the Premier League and clubs and stuff. But curious to know from your perspective, what differentiates good partners in terms of how they activate, how well they use these things across all the platforms versus people that may not be doing it as well?
A few things spring to mind and I'll go through them. Bravery, we talked about a bit. Authenticity, we spoke about a bit. Really thinking deeply about the why and not being tied to vanity metrics or at least understanding why you're measuring the thing you're measuring.
Yeah.
So let's take them one by one. I think the bravery point is kind of what I just alluded to of how are you willing to push the envelope a bit? How are you empowered by your leadership to take risks and do something new in a world that's so crowded and can feel homogenous? You know, take the app story we were talking about. How many times will you open a Premier League football club's app and see a kind of similar thing across all of them?
Yeah.
Or Formula One, or the Premier League, or the Champions League app. And so the ones that are winning are taking risks and putting out something different.
Yeah.
The Arsenal app launched this week and I was playing around with it and I thought that was really well done because it had a lot of authenticity and legacy.
Yeah.
There's clearly a lot of thought went into the marketing. It had all the retail built into it and ticketing, which is a big thing for me because most apps send you back out towards the website and then it feels clunky and you have to sign in again.
Yeah.
I've already signed in. So bravery, I think, is one. And it's easy for me to sit on one side of the table and say, take that risk. I know it's harder if you're working in an organization to do that. But again, we want to get you comfortable with that. Authenticity is just another big one. And a lot of what people come to us for is like, tell us what young fans are doing and seeing and believing. And so what we do is we boil the data, we understand the trends, and then we present back because again, going back to that consultant approach, I think people like the Premier League will come to us and say, hey, what are younger fans doing we should be ahead of? And the thing that comes up again and again and again, either in the data on the apps or through focus groups or talking to creators is authenticity. And so fans are really put off now when they see stuff, young fans are put off when they see stuff that is too corporate. And so I think opening up, being a bit more playful, working with creators and athletes more is important. So I think another revolution we're going through is the importance of individuals being almost as important as institutions. So, and I don't think this is just a sport thing. If you look at the news industry, you know, journalists are followed as much as the news organization.
Yeah.
If you look at gaming, people watch Twitch streamers as much as they play the game.
Yeah.
If you look at music, the Billboard 100 hit the first point last year where all 100 were solo artists, not groups. Whereas I grew up with groups being the big thing.
Yeah, of course.
So across all you could, talk about the importance of politicians versus political parties. Like the importance of the individual has gone
Individuality,
up.
yeah.
Exactly.
Ayn Rand must be the fountainhead. Like it's all about individuality.
For sure.
She must be happy somewhere.
Sure. And I think some of that is enabled by tech, right? Like you and I can go direct to things, we can do this rather than needing to do it through radio or television. Like that's important. And so the implication of that then, I think, is we see on Meta's apps is that people follow individuals as much as institutions. So Cristiano Ronaldo is the most followed account.
The best example for
Yeah,
this. Yeah.
the most liked photo ever on Instagram is Lionel Messi lifting the World Cup trophy.
Yeah.
So we see it again and again. And so the implication then for the institution, so the league or the club, etc., is how do you make these guys the face of your content more?
Yeah.
How are you teaming up with creators more, which always makes people feel a bit nervous, I think, to hand over the reins to creators or let them in behind the scenes. But again, you asked the question, I think the brands that are doing it well are being very open to partnering with creators. And so we play a role, I think, of being the matchmakers.
Yeah.
So a lot of brands will come to us and say, hey, we want to work with creators. We don't really know how. Who should we work with? And then through our colleagues that manage the creator ecosystem, we'll say, you know what, this guy's perfect, or this girl's perfect to team up with. So
Bella James does a good job with Formula One.
Yeah.
Her content trends quite a bit.
It's a great example. So I think the bravery, the authenticity are two things that over and over again, the brands that are getting right do that. Maybe there's something as well about connecting back to in real life experiences. I think there's a craving for that now. Like the digital experience is super important and we get that. Like that's the world that we work in, but how are you connecting it back to in real life experiences, be it the game, be it stadium tours, be it fan fest, be it places where people can meet up. I think there's a bit of that as well. So the people that are getting right, I think, are looking at those kind of things.
If you were advising a broadcaster today or a league, over the next decade, what are the one or two things that you would recommend, in terms of building the future of fandom for their purposes?
I think number one is being really clear on your audience segmentation.
Yeah.
And that starts with your data and your analytics, the analytics you get through social, but also your first party analytics of really understanding your different types of consumers, what they want, how you serve them, and treating them differently.
Yeah.
The people expect to be segmented and treated differently. And even it can be very irritating as a consumer. We've all had it when you turn up to a website, you tell them something about yourself, and then 5 minutes later they ask the same question or they've not come into it. And I don't want to name names, but there's happened experiences where you feel that. So I think from a marketing point of view, audience segmentation, and then the other thing I would say is on the commercial side, which is the next bit once you've got the audience, is sophistication and innovation in commercial models. We've talked about it before. I've heard you talk about it before. And like the world has evolved in sport from being the pay TV check to a bunch of other different forms of monetization. And becoming really sophisticated with that is going to be the key. So how are you diversifying your revenues through not just the subscription revenues, but through TVOD revenues, people being able to microtransact for parts of a game, perhaps. Retail experiences. I was looking through the Arsenal offering, and something that always stands out to me is the Stanley collaboration they've got. So you can buy the bruised banana Arsenal kit from the 90s in a Stanley mug format.
Oh, interesting.
It just makes for a really nice retail experiences rather than here's the kit, it cost 80 quid.
Yeah.
So I think innovation there will be key. Different types of ticketing experiences, not just game day, but maybe around the game and the experiences, meet and greets, live podcast type experiences. I don't know. So those two for me, like on the marketing side, how are you using data to be more segmented in your approach? And then on the commercial side, new models and new ways of engaging people.
I've said this before, but I think everyone sort of went through this disruption, right? Like pay TV bundles falling apart. You now have to start going direct to consumer, streaming. And how do you make up that shortfall of revenue that might go down from media rights? Not everyone has faced that, obviously, but there are quite a few leagues that have. But I think they missed the opportunity that when you go direct to consumer, there is an opportunity to make money. It's not just you're making up a shortfall from what was lost. There are other ways to monetize that is significantly greater if you do it right, through personalization, through driving direct monetization and direct revenue streams, whether it's microtransactions, whether it's performance advertising versus brand advertising, whether it is upselling on different transactions that you couldn't do on the cable bundle. But the organizations do it right. Some have been forced into it, like, French League was forced into going direct to consumer, and now they are forced to innovate. And, then when the necessity, I guess, brings out innovation in a way. But hopefully my hope is that with AI, the operational side of things will become easier because, so much about what we talk about is innovation and people should be more brave and daring. But they're not staffed up or they don't have the resources internally to actually do it right. But I think the operationalization of all of these experiences using AI and agents is going to actually make it easier for them to experiment and try and get better.
Yeah.
And analyze that data and create those segments that they probably may not have been able to do in the past. So
For sure.
I do think that's going to be the big shift.
The other thing I think about a lot is if we're seeing this trend a little bit from pay TV to free to air, you see a lot of leagues now offering a little bit more free to air.
Yeah.
Then that increases reach and therefore increases the opportunity for sponsorship, which is a bit more, if you think about some of the sports that have always stayed free to air.
Like
I think
the
about
NFL,
or even like in Europe, I think about a World Cup or an Olympics.
BBC, yeah.
You know, you had these really nice, sophisticated sponsorship experiences, and maybe we're going to see that make a bigger presence. Yeah, come back, bigger presence.
Yeah.
And then again, how are you offering brands something really innovative they can partner with you on? And so I think while maybe 10, 20 years of media rights revolution has happened, maybe we're going to see more sophistication in sponsor rights the next 10 years, maybe as things move free to air. So that's really exciting as well. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about how operators or partners and brands should be doing. How do you see future of fandom evolving from a consumer standpoint in the next 5 years?
So some of these might be repeating, but I think it bears saying.
Yeah.
You're no longer limited to your local experience of your local football team, but the world is open to you now. You can support any sport or any club or any athlete from across the world. So trend number one, I think you can use things like social media to expose fans to new sports and they can fall in love with them. The amount of people I know here in the UK anecdotally that are now big fans of the American sports.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a thing really growing up, but now people are going to flock to watch the NFL game in London, which I think is sort of October time.
Yeah.
We saw it with the NBA a few weeks ago. This is
Madrid,
really meaningful. So I think that's something that will just keep becoming more and more prevalent. You'll always have your local team, but I think that then next you'll be more open to other stuff. I think the athlete side is another one that people increasingly, my kids, for example, are more interested in the athletes and what they're doing than necessarily being obsessed with the clubs. Again, it's been said, but it's worth bearing, like where does that get taken to its obvious end, which is the athletes being really a key driver of content. What if they were even streaming games themselves? You know, this could be the logical end.
We have started seeing creators streaming games, obviously.
Yeah.
So there is that, shift in broadcast and media rights in that sense already.
Absolutely. I mean, what is a broadcaster in 2026, right? It could be a creator gets hold of some rights and broadcasts themselves. We saw that by the time I left YouTube, there was 2 or 3 case studies.
Yeah, Mark Goldbridge started.
Mark Goldbridge, Bundesliga, Kazi TV with the World Cup in Brazil. And then one of my personal favorites was a rugby channel called Egg Chasers.
Okay.
You may not have heard of it, but a passionate fan channel. I can't remember how many subscribers. I want to say 80,000. Not huge, but basically.
But hardcore.
Hardcore. Yeah. And then went and made a bold decision to go and buy the rights to 2nd Division French rugby and broadcast it. And that was another really good example, I think, of taking ownership of it and just saying, well, what if we did it ourselves? Like, we already know the game. We can commentate. And it's a democratization of broadcast, I think, that isn't existential for the TV broadcasters, but it's complementary.
It's additive,
Yeah. So there are a few. And then being biased again, I would come back to the glass and say, like, the fan experience is going to change because you'll have this more frictionless tech in your day-to-day of how you consume sports. I mean, that's more relevant for going to the games than maybe watching on TV. But I think that's going to be really powerful and hopefully change the way we consume sport and enjoy it.
Awesome. That was great.
Cool.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
This went on way past that I thought it would, but it was really engrossing for me at least.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That's it for this episode of Future of Fandom. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll drop Rob's LinkedIn profile in the show notes so you can follow him. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Future of Fandom. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and follow LiveLike on LinkedIn for more conversations with the people shaping what's next in the world of sports and media. Until next time, keep building for fans, not just users.